Hello, my name's Annabelle Daniel and I'm the Chief Executive of Women's Community Shelters, and I would like to welcome you to our March newsletter. And firstly, I want to say a huge thank you to everybody who contributed to our International Women's Day campaign, which this year supported the Firefly First Nations Fund. Now, that fund is something new that we've initiated this year, and it is to provide culturally tailored and safe supports to First Nations and Aboriginal women across our shelter network and housing projects. We're really proud of the donations that it received, and we're going to leave that fund open for the future because we want this to be an ongoing commitment from Women's Community Shelters and our donors and supporters towards First Nations women across our network. It's very important. We're enormously grateful to donors, and so to everybody who supported it, thank you from the bottom of my heart, and to those who might like to support it, it's still open. Check out the link down below. Now, as you're watching this newsletter, there's a big cultural moment breaking, and you may have seen it. It's Louis Theroux's documentary called Into the Manosphere. Now, this documentary has actually promoted a lot of discussion, and if you haven't heard about the manosphere before, let me give you a little bit of a definition of what it is. So, the manosphere is actually a collection of online forums, websites, and social media communities, influencers and podcasters that generally talk broadly about men's rights and contemporary issues facing men and boys. And so the key beliefs that emerge from this are really quite an extreme promotion of traditional values and gender roles, traditional masculinity, ideas of male supremacy, misogyny, and quite often violence and conservatism and align with far-right politics. And so Louis Theroux talks to some of the influencers that are in this space, talks to those that are promoting this hyper-masculine culture, and really exposes how underpinning it all is they're making a lot of money out of this, and they're making a lot of money out of influencing young minds towards these kinds of ideas. And there's been some studies recently which talk about this, and an Australian study just recently found that 40% of boys aged 13 to 17 agree, scarily, that women lie about domestic and family violence. And a global survey found that around a third of Gen Z boys agree that a wife should obey her husband, and that 59% of men think that equality has simply gone too far. Now, these should be things of concern, because what we know is that when we do our Walk the Talk programs across high schools, that we do see these kinds of issues raised from time to time in certain school environments. There are young people who are exposed to these ideas every single day. And one of the things that the documentary doesn't really talk about and doesn't really expose is the impact on young women of these ideas. In the documentary, it's very much the men's subjectivity that is platformed, talked about, and while that is the documentary style, we also need to acknowledge that these kinds of ideas do have real-world impacts for young women and girls going through school and university. We've also seen the rise in peer-to-peer young people's sexual assault over the last couple of years as a result of the increasing online harms, not just of the manosphere, but access to pornography online. So these are the kinds of things that when we're talking about our education programs, our Walk the Talk, we know that it is incredibly important that we continue to shape attitudes through our primary prevention work. It's also incredibly important that we engage young men and young women in being part of the solution, which is why we have the service learning component of our Walk the Talk program, where we get those young men and women to engage practically in supporting women and kids affected by domestic and family violence in their communities. It's so powerful to be able to engage in good and pro-social behaviour, even when you're still working out exactly what it is that you think about gender relationships and about how all of those things work, you know, as you're developing yourself. So Walk the Talk remains an incredibly important program. We want to expand it, and we really think it does good work, not just about attitudes, but also about behaviours.